I married a sheep. I like to tell you a story and I'll know I'll make you laugh. We couldn't take any chances, so we had to steal the calf. The old cow got angry and we woke her from her sleep. We couldn't take any chances and we went and stole the sheep. One, two, three, everybody. I divide the build a boat, and I divide the sailor. I divide the get the fish, so bringing them out to lighter. I don't want your maggoty fish, they're no good for winter. I can catch better than that down upon the lister. Down the pier, where you want to
They sounded cheerful. I thought they were happy to be going back to work in Toronto, Canada's biggest city. But I was wrong.
A lot of people up there, a lot of hustle and bustle. I didn't like it at all.
You know, your friends are when you're home. Like, in the community at home, there's, you can go 20 miles easy around the whole place, and everybody's your friend. Up there, you don't know anybody that's even next door. It's totally different.
Everybody's out for themselves up there. They just look after themselves. I don't know.
People that goes away from Newfoundland, I don't think they should have to go away. No, I think that's a crime. There's no jobs. They gotta go away. They gotta burn up their homes, and they gotta go up there to make a living. Enough to get their unemployment, and they comes back and that's it, and then they gotta go back again. I figures years to come, nobody is gonna be in here. It's gonna be a ghost town.
I grieve to leave my native land. I grieve to leave my comrades all.
This train doesn't run anymore. Soon after my trip, it closed.
And the bonny, bonny lad that I do
It was time to start a little background reading. Coming up was my first stop and my first Canadian city, the famous old naval port of Halifax.
The train from Sydney is now arriving on track 1. The train from Provenance to Sydney arrives at La...
300 miles covered, only 3,500 to go. Berenice had got off one stop earlier, but I'd made another new friend. His name was Tom Gallant, a one-time singer who's now a full-time sailor. He invited me aboard once I'd looked around Halifax. People here certainly haven't forgotten where they came from. Halifax is the capital of Nova Scotia, which means New Scotland. This was British North America. And at first sight, it still looked to me more British than North American. Canada only got its own maple leaf flag 25 years ago, and some places still don't seem to have heard about it. The British war against their rebellious American colonies was fought from Halifax. Here, they don't seem all that pleased that George Washington won. I could see a Canadian identity was emerging here, but slowly, almost reluctantly. Perhaps it's because Nova Scotians were comfortable with the British Empire. In fact, geography's put them a lot closer to Britain than they are to the far-off provinces of Western Canada. Life in Halifax isn't all fish and chips. I'd stumbled on the autumn Mardi Gras, a citywide bash that takes over the whole of downtown. Some local natives had decided on dinner. Me. Even a Halifax street party has a certain British respectability. They say that Canada was founded on the values of peace, law and order, values that came from Britain. I could still see that law-abiding legacy. Among 70,000 all-night revelers, only one minor crime was reported, an inept mugger who was arrested the next day. Next morning, I dropped in on the nearby town of Lunenburg to take up my invitation to go sailing. My friend Tom had found a freedom rare in Atlantic Canada, the freedom to be able to stay at home. Born here in Nova Scotia, he'd moved to Toronto and become a successful entertainer. Then he gave it all up to come back to the sea. Today, Tom's scratching out a living as a part-time skipper leading tourist cruises. He's turned his back on the good life for what he thinks is a better one. I've done a bit of sailing myself. I once crossed the Atlantic alone, so I know a few of the old seafaring traditions.
Right. Well, Murray, speaking of all nautical expressions and traditions, when we go to sea out here, we take one of these bottles of this here stuff, and we give a drink to the old man. There you go, buddy. Stay out there. And then we have one each ourselves. To you. Welcome aboard. That's a good, it's a nice blend, isn't it? It's a good week.
This is rum drinking's a big thing in Nova Scotia, eh?
It's the national alternative.
Alternative to what?
To everything.
I say,
To hell with it, let's get drunk.
Yeah.
When I sail back here, and we're coming into Lunenburg, the last 6 hours coming in, I'm in a state of ecstasy that's almost impossible to hold inside my heart, you know, it's so strong. And there's no, I don't think there is any reason for it. It's just where I belong.
You're coming home.
It's where I belong. The dream of everybody in Toronto is to move to New York or Los Angeles and be a star.
Yeah.
The dream of everybody in Nova Scotia is to be able to afford to stay here. That's the difference.
Unlike sailboats, trains run on timetables. And the way the skipper was passing around the rum, I was going to have a hard time catching my train.
Oh, Shenandoah, I long to hear you. Away, you rolling river. Oh, Shenandoah, I long to hear you. Away, I'm bound to go across the wide Missouri.
Back on the track. Now I joined the main line, the transcontinental train to Montreal that was part of the Canadian Railway legend. Up until the 1950s, this was one of the world's most glamorous trains. In those days, the jet set was the train set. A romantic world of sweeping cars and chance encounters.
I have been made
we have in the bedroom.
Trains have attractions that airplanes don't. Like putting your head out of the window. And if you're learning to count, you can count telephone poles.
19, 20, 21, 22.
Canada has lots of scenery, and there's really only one place to view it from, that indispensable Canadian invention, the dome car. It's ideal for seeing a country where practically everyone seems to have been born within the sound of a train.
All right, she wants to see my house.
It's over there.
There it is, right over there.
Yeah, over there.
There it is, you can see
Yeah.
it. My house, the house I was born. The house I was born in. She knows where it is, right over there. Across at the base of the hill.
This railway was the great Canadian dream, an iron road driven through an impossible wilderness, and it's much celebrated in Canadian myth and music.
There was a time in this fair land when the railroad did not run, when the wild, majestic mountains stood alone against the sun. Long before the white man and long before the wheel, when the green, dark forest was too silent to be real.
Many countries built railways. Canada may be the only one built by a railway. The train welded Canada together, a steel wedding band uniting the people of the second great nation of North America. The border between Canada and the United States is the world's longest undefended frontier. But psychologically, Canada was defended by a railway that stretched right along the border, pulling people east and west and barring the way south. Many Canadians were once Americans who fled the American Revolution. They wanted to build a second America that would stay loyal to the British Crown. The railway was to be their main line of defense, holding together a new country which combined the boots and Stetson of the American cowboy with the security of the British red coat. I was now entering the province of New Brunswick, settled by American refugees passionately loyal to the British Empire, as I learned from a young man I met on the train.
You got to remember, a lot of Canadians were on the opposite side of the American Revolution to the United Empire Loyalists, and there's a lot of those in Ontario. A lot of people are descended from.
You think that there's still the feeling of the Empire Loyalists strong in Canada?
Damn right there is. They think, you know, the American Revolution was a mistake.
Yeah.
We didn't have the violence, we didn't have the bloodshed, and we've achieved political independence as much as they have. And we didn't have to go through all violence and chaos that they had. We never fought a civil war in this country yet, and hopefully we never will.
So maybe that revolution was a bad idea?
I think the American Revolution was a mistake. You have two sides to a revolution. You have those people who want change, and you have people who don't want change. And obviously the United Empire Loyalists and Canadians that are now are the people that were the conservatives in that part of the revolution. They wanted to maintain the status quo. Yeah, I think basically Canadians are pretty conservative people.
Are you personally conservative? I don't mean politically, I mean in your...
Oh, yeah, very conservative.
You are?
That's part of being Canadian, yeah.
Rolling through the wilderness called for some entertainment, and the passengers supplied it. Though Canadian enthusiasm is not of the knee-slapping variety. Even here on the Trans-Canadian train, the United States is never far away. In fact, it's right outside the window. The Canadian tracks take a shortcut through the American state of Maine, which juts into Canada between Halifax and Montreal. And US border guard gets on the Canadian train.
What are we doing here? Is there Canadian American hostages?
The guard's job is to make sure all the doors are locked and sealed shut. Just in case some reckless Canadian should suddenly fling himself off the train in pursuit of the American dream just outside the window. It was my first night on the train, and I was curious to try out the Canadian sleeping car. As it happens, it's a Canadian invention, dating back to 1857, and not much changed since those days. Next morning, Montreal, Canada's most cosmopolitan city. Time for my first sortie into Canadian big city life. It's the world's second largest French-speaking city, famous for sharp dresses and chic coiffures. A big, sophisticated town where, I've been warned, an immaculate toilette is de rigueur. At first glance, this could be the skyline of any big North American city. 2 million people and 4 million cars. This is the province of Quebec, the last remaining stronghold of French in North America. People here just don't speak the same language. In fact, I was surprised to discover that for over a decade, it's been the law of the province of Quebec that all outdoor signs must be in French only. These are real French fries. Signs in English are outlawed, right down to the last apostrophe. What could be more American than a marathon? But the crowd was cheering them on in French. I heard that many Quebecers were demanding independence under their own flag. They're led by the Parti Québécois, a movement striving to separate from Canada. But I had to come here to discover just how deep and widespread Quebec nationalism runs.
No, it's not really for politics. It's like, it's a symbol, I don't know how to say that, symbole. Okay, un symbole. Ça nous appartient. It's our.
And, oh yeah, if I choose for me,
the Parti du Québec.
Le Parti du Québec, yes.
It's the Parti Québécois. It's because we want the independence for the Quebec. We want to be a country.
Wouldn't that cut Canada in half?
Yes, but we are not. We don't. I don't live in Canada. I live in Quebec. Yeah. For me, it's my country is Quebec. It's not Canada.
To brush up on my Quebec history, I dropped in on Quebec City, the capital of the province, just down the line from Montreal.
What happened to you last night?
What's it to you? They created me.
Here, 95% of the population speaks French, the last remnant of the days when the French Empire ruled 2/3 of North America. This place reminded me of the rainy province of Brittany in France, because long ago that's where most French Quebecers came from. You don't really feel you're in North America here. You're either in Montmartre or in Hollywood. But Quebec isn't just famous for French architecture. The future of all North America was decided here, on one famous battlefield. And there's only one way to see it.
But before I get too far, the date of Quebec City, 1608. Yeah, founded by Samuel de Champlain. Look at these houses down in here now, the averaging the 200 years or so. Really? This is all Quebec. Hello, how are you? Oui, attends bien. Mademoiselle. The battle took place, it was 13th of September, 1759. That's where they fought the French and British.
The battlefield looks more like a park today. But it was here that the French Marquis de Montcalm lost the battle and his life to British General James Wolfe.
How the British did it come up the river, see?
Yet the British didn't really win either. With the French threat gone, the American colonies no longer needed British protection, and so they launched their revolution. In a sense, both the United States and Canada were born here, while another nation died, the Empire of New France. Quebec City would have been its Washington. Perhaps that's why French Canadians are so determined to defend their language and culture in their corner of the world. In a way, the Battle of Quebec has never ended.
I get real upset and I get real sick, you know.
Basically, we'd like another beer.
Yeah, I would like another. Mademoiselle. This is about the only thing.
Why, last night in Quebec, I ran into two Quebec newspaper columnists, English columnist Nick Alftamar and French columnist Gerald Leblanc. 200 years after the battle was over, they were still fighting it.
You don't agree deep down that it's not, we cannot take that for granted, being a French society in North America. You have to kind of help it and help it a lot. You don't accept that deep down.
Who's you?
The English-speaking people in Montreal.
We accept being a minority, but we'd like all minorities, we'd like to be accepted, and it's very hard to think that we're respected or accepted when you find that our language on public display on a sign is as poisonous to the majority collective society as the AIDS virus is. You know, I mean, that's the way we're made to feel.
Are we talking about language or are we talking about politics? Who's the boss?
We're talking about, power.
Power. Who's the boss?
Yeah, right.
Okay, now we're discussing who's the boss in Canada or who's the boss in Quebec?
Well, I don't know. Sometimes I think, the old adage, I don't know if you heard about Canada, they said Canada was a very lucky country that we had access to French culture, American know-how, and British politics. And we ended up with American culture, British know-how, and French politics.
No, that's good.
So, who won the Battle of Quebec? To an old war correspondent like me, the conflict seemed too friendly to be serious. French Canadians seem to have flourished here as if they'd won the Battle of Quebec. And Canada has gained a unique dual culture that no other country has. I felt very much at home in both parts of Canada. I wish they'd stop fighting that old battle, because both sides have too much to lose. Another day, another train. This is Canada's ritziest train, heading to Canada's glitziest city, Toronto. They even pass out free televisions.
Yes, good morning. It's Rita Martineau. May I speak to the NFA, please? Thank you. Well, listen, the train is behind, is late, okay? I'll be arriving around...
These people are on their way to work, 5 hours away, in a train that thinks it's an airplane.
Would you like some orange juice?
And predictably, this is the train that's expected to survive and get even glitzier when the rest of the train system is gone.
Breakfast? Yes. Okay. This is to start you off.
Everything here feels rather American, and that seems to trouble some Canadians. They wonder why they can't have a strong Canadian identity to match that of their neighbor on the other side of the border.
There are some differences that the Canadians feel between themselves and Americans, but I think part of our concern about Americanism is that we really want to be different. We haven't quite been able to define what that difference is. It's always difficult when you're at some international function and every country is supposed to sing a song or do a dance which represents their nationality. Canadians always have a problem. I mean, they can't do a square dance, that's as American as Canadian. So we end up singing Alouette, most of us who don't speak French. But beyond singing Alouette, we find it a little difficult to say, now, there's a Canadian song, or there's a Canadian dance, or there's a Canadian piece of theater.
I was off to meet Canada's foremost railway authority, Pierre Berton, author of many books on the railway he calls the National Dream. Berton lives in Toronto. It was a small town on Lake Ontario with only 1,600 people when the railway was built. Now it boasts over 3 million. This is a train for people in a hurry. They just can't wait to get to the office. I'd arranged to meet author Pierre Berton in Toronto's Union Station. He's a big man who took me on a tour of an enormous station that looked more like a cathedral.
It's based on romance. It's based on a great Canadian myth. Think of it this way. Every country has an epic story in their background. So look at the Spanish Armada, the French Revolution struck the Bastille, the American Revolution, the War Trade, the Long March. We're the only one in which there's no blood. And the only country in the world in which our great mythic endeavor is the building of a railway.
So there's a kind of a mythical or almost religious quality about the railway then?
Yeah, well, look at this building. This is
looks
a
like
temple.
a temple, yeah.
This based on the Roman baths of Caracalla, they tell me. It is a temple, as all Canadian major railway stations are, because there is a religion about railways, or at least, as you say, a myth. The Canadians have a different attitude towards railways than most people in the world because, not only because the railways started the country, but because the country is shaped like a railway. I mean, 90% of our people live within 200 miles of the border. So what we are, a country, from a population point of view, 4,000 miles long, 200 miles thick, with an archipelago of population islands dispersed between enormous barriers, the angry ocean, the white-plumed mountains, the vast Canadian Shield, 1,000 miles of rock and muskeg, the psychological barrier of Quebec. So in this country, transportation and communication are terribly, terribly important and romantic.
The train may be romantic, but Toronto certainly isn't. It seemed to be a bad case of the North American edifice complex. There's that flag again. This is where the money came from to build the railway. An old-fashioned, puritanical town where, as the Canadian joke goes, people say, "Thank God it's Monday." Yet I could see that the toil of dour Torontonians has created